I recently watched a Bill Moyers interview of Maya Angelou in 1982. So she was quite a bit younger than when we last saw her at inaugurations. They were visiting Stamps, Arkansas. That's a place down not far from where my mother grew up. Maya grew up in St. Louis, which is not far from where I grew up, about 50 miles. And even though Missouri is described as a border state, the country down there around St. Louis is a lot more like Alabama than it is Chicago. In the interview with Moyers, Maya told the story of how when she was in St. Louis, she was raped when she was 7 years old. And when that was happening, she screamed. And when she screamed, someone came in and shot the person who was raping her, and that person died. And so Maya became afraid to speak because she thought that her screaming actually caused the man to die. But she did learn to speak again. She had an aunt who would read to her wonderful books like The Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, the worst of times. She would read beautifully, and her reading to Maya sounded like music because she could hear the rhythm of the words in the novels that she was listening to. So after a while, Maya began to tell herself that when she spoke, she was actually singing. So she wasn't really speaking, even though of course she was, but because she was actually singing, then nobody would be hurt by her words. And so in that way, Maya regained her ability to speak. And thank goodness she did, because we have wonderful poetry that she wrote. Well, today we are going to hear the first words that Jesus spoke to the crowds in the Gospel of Matthew. And we are told that when he went up to that mountain, he opened his mouth to speak. Listen with me to our scripture today in Matthew 5, starting with verse 1. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then they began to speak, and he taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The word of the Lord. One of the most famous poems that has been written during my lifetime was written by Maya Angelou. And the name of that poem is "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings." I'm going to read to you the opening of that poem, which describes the difference between the free bird and the caged bird. The free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun's rays and dares to claim the sky. The bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped, and his feet are tied. So he opens his voice to sing. Caged bird sings of freedom. God has always been in the business of freeing humankind. When God spoke to Moses out of a burning bush, God said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go." Moses heard that and he thought, this is probably not going to happen. He didn't think that what the Lord was telling him was actually going to take place no matter what he said. So he told God, "I am slow of speech." God used him anyway, and the people were freed. Then he went up onto the mountain and he received the 10 Commandments from God later on. And when God spoke to him, the first words that God said were, "I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt." Those were the identifying words of who was speaking. The Lord who delivered you from slavery. When Matthew begins to tell the story of Jesus, we find Jesus going up a mountain, a little bit like Moses. We are told that Jesus opened his mouth to speak, and when we are told that in Scripture, what it means is what that person has to say that's coming up is going to be really, really important. And then we're told that Jesus sat down, and that's what rabbis did when they were getting ready to teach. They sat down, and then we hear something that perhaps we don't expect. We don't hear commandments, even though it's a lot like the story of Moses on the mountain. Instead of commandments, we hear blessings. And these words of blessing are the prologue to the whole Sermon on the Mount. Just as the words that were spoken to Moses so long ago, "I am the Lord your God who delivered you from the land of Egypt," were the prologue to the 10 Commandments. You see, in both of these instances, the prologue it situates us in a place. It tells us where we are. You know, I've been lost more times than I would like to admit. Many of them were before the invention of the GPS technology, some after. But at any rate, I discovered from being lost all these times that the biggest problem I had was that I didn't know where I was. Now, I know it sort of sounds like, well, of course you didn't know where you were lost. But you know, there have been times when I couldn't find my way, but I knew where I was. And I don't call that being lost. I just say I'm a little confused and I haven't gotten there yet. But when I'm in a place where I really don't know where I am, I'm lost. And so in both the Sermon on the Mount and the story of Moses on the mountain, what happens at the very beginning is that we are situated in a place and told, you are here. A little bit like, you know, those yellow arrows they used to paint on some of the maps in the national parks, where you're standing there at the trailhead, and here's the map, and then the map arrow points to where you are on the map, so then you can look on the map and see where you have to go. I really wish they would do that all the time for everything, but rarely. So that yellow arrow tells us where we start. It's so important to know where we start. If God wouldn't have said to Moses, "I am the Lord your God who delivered you from the land of Egypt," how is it to be known that these 10 commandments were from anybody important, right? That's how the people knew it was the Lord, and they knew the Lord had delivered them, so they were to listen. The same goes for Jesus. When Jesus gives the prologue called the Beatitudes, he is basically saying to us, you are here. Now, I must admit to you that most of my life, I never thought these Beatitudes were anything but commandments. I was very mistaken. I didn't know what they were. And so when I heard, blessed are the poor in spirit, and blessed are the peacemakers, I started telling myself, I'm never going to be able to do this. This is too much. I just can't make it, you know. I just thought, well, meek? I didn't think so. Humble, not so much. Peacemaker? Usually I'm the opposite. Pure in heart? How does someone get to be that? And so I went through all the Beatitudes, and I was just overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I just can't handle this. This is too much. I don't know how to get to be like this. And so I went straight into the sermon itself, which says, love your enemies. And I could actually get my arms around that. I thought it would be easier to love my enemies than to become pure in heart. But, you know, the whole problem I had was that I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what these Beatitudes were. I didn't understand that they were actually a description of God's world. And not only that, you'll notice there's no thou shalt nots in the Beatitudes. These are all indicative sentences. Blessed are the peacemakers. Oh. In God's world, that's the way it is. Blessed are the pure in heart. Now, this is not the kind of world that I thought I lived in. Because when I looked around, I could see that the people I thought were blessed were powerful, and they were rich, and they had lots of influence, and usually they weren't working on peace. And so it didn't seem to connect. I didn't understand, well, where is this world anyway? This world that Jesus is talking about. I don't see it around me. Actually, at that point, I wasn't able to see it because I didn't know how to look for it. But actually, it's all around. Not as obvious as the world that we see and read about and experience every day. But it is there. It is all around us. One time, a while back, I was celebrating Seder with Dad's sister, my sister-in-law. And so she was, and when you celebrate the Seder, you tell the story of Moses delivering the people out of Egypt. And so after that story was told, Leah looked at all of us and said, what is the most important decision that everyone who lives must make? We all sat around and for a while didn't quite know how to answer her. So finally she said, it is the decision between slavery and the unknown. Slavery and the unknown. Something worth thinking about for just a moment. You see, the people that Jesus was addressing when he spoke the Beatitudes in the Sermon on the Mount, those people were in bondage. Now, they weren't in the kind of bondage that the slaves were in Egypt. That's true. But by all intents and purposes, they were living in a country called Rome, where all of their property had been taken from them. They had no real freedom. They were destitute, and Rome was lording over them all the time. And then, of course, there were the disagreements that they even had with each other, and all of that was going on. And, well, let's just say they wouldn't have thought of themselves as free. So Jesus, before he even began the Sermon on the Mount, which is in itself a very challenging sermon, he decided to tell them what is. What is. This is what God is. And it's here. It's really here. And it's here right now. And you are here. Sermon on the Mount tells them where they live. The world around us doesn't really look a lot like this, I will freely admit. And so it's hard to imagine that kind of freedom is available to us at any moment in time. And yet, if we choose between freedom and we make the choice for freedom, and we choose the unknown instead of slavery, we're going to find our way to freedom. One way or another, we will. The unknown will take us somewhere else, and that somewhere else is going to be this place that Jesus is describing in the Beatitudes. It will take us to God's world, which is real and here, right now. But we do have to choose. It's a difficult choice. I know some of you, many of you probably, are facing something today. I am myself facing something today that is difficult. It's like a thorn, on your side, and every time you turn, it seems to be showing up all the time. And so it's really difficult to deal with this particular thing. You may have even found that you've tried for a long, long time to deal with it, and it just keeps popping up like some unwanted thought or experience. It just keeps showing up no matter what you do. What I'd like for you to do today is to imagine that thing that you struggle with, that seems to be holding you in bondage sometimes. Imagine that thing is situated in the middle of the world that Jesus describes. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are they who mourn. Imagine that that thing is on the stage of grace. On the stage of grace. And if you can get that far, then imagine that that thing, no matter how painful, could actually turn up within you something that could help another person. That your pain that you're going through, the things that you are experiencing, will strengthen you so that you can help someone else. Or imagine that that thing you're going through that is teaching you lessons along the way, that eventually those lessons will help you to face the next thing that comes along, if you allow that thing to teach you. And imagine even more that that thing that's putting you through agony on some days, imagine that that thing is digging out within you, within your heart, a capacity for compassion. And that compassion is not just going to serve others, which it well may do, but that compassion that is coming out of the suffering you are experiencing can be for yourself as well. You could learn to be compassionate to yourself. And we're all learning that every day. So I want to share with you the end of Maya's poem as we close. Because what I just described to you is the way God's world works. And Maya has something to say about that too, when she describes her caged bird. The caged bird stands at the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, where the caged bird sings of freedom. We are free, brothers and sisters. Let us open our throats and sing of hear that hope is not lost. Let us sing